Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, leading publishers of books, directories, educational guides and magazines aimed at schools in the UK and beyond. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. This is the Twilight show with Nathan Gynn. This is Tom in the background. Today we're talking about getting staff wellbeing right. Is staff wellbeing more than just cupcakes and, other things, other nice little delights? Does staff wellbeing have to be more closely embedded within the structures of the school? We're going to be joined by Nathan in just a moment, but of course we are here today courtesy of John Catt Educational, and Nathan will be telling you more about them. I'm just going to invite Nathan in right now to speak. Nathan is going to come in and then he will be taking it away for the next hour and a half. Fingers crossed anyway. I'm sure he'll be in just a second.
Chris or Avatawi. I can see Nadira here, who's going to be joining us very shortly. So, Nadira, I'm going to invite you to speak. Just having a look there. Looks like you might not be listening. Oh, Nadira, I'm just going to check if you are. Can you message me if you're listening on an Android device? And then we'll just see how that goes. If you can just drop me a message, because there is a slightly different way that we need to think about it. If not, if you're listening on an iPhone, you can just click that call in button, much like any of our listeners. You can call in and you can join the space. You can join the conversation. Now, tonight, as Tom said, we are talking about teacher wellbeing and staff wellbeing, but we're going to be talking about whole staff wellbeing. We are going to be looking a little bit into talking about, more than cupcakes. I've titled the part at the start of this. What should we be doing that is more than just putting those cupcakes in the staff room? Now, it looks like, Nadira, I can see you've joined us there. Can you hear me, Nadira?
Hi, guys. Yeah, I can hear you if you can hear me.
There you go. You're coming through loud and clear. And it is a bit of a special for us tonight. We've switched over to Spaces, but we are hoping to get the same kind of quality conversation, maybe some listeners joining in, talking with us. Now, Nadira Khan, I should say, you're an AAHT for Staff and Student Wellbeing from an inner London school. I guess, for anyone listening in, if you want to maybe give us that kind of a little brief, who are you, what do you do, how have you got to where you are now? Tell us a little about yourself.
So, evening, guys. I hope you're all well. My name is Nadira Khan. I'm an AAHT, as Nathan said. That's an Associate Assistant Head Teacher of Staff and Student Wellbeing in an inner London school in East London. Alongside that, I am also the Deputy DSL, the Senior Mental Health Lead, and a Head of Year. I actually came into teaching in 2011, and I've survived, I think, especially now when we're talking about such a topical issue of wellbeing. Thoroughly enjoy my job. I've got a lot of experience in pastoral leadership, but I actually came to my wellbeing role post-pandemic, and we could talk about that more later.
Yeah, definitely. Busy times as well. That's a lot of hats you're wearing, and hopefully, we'll be picking apart those different threads. As I say, if you're listening in, you can tweet us. You can call in. You can share emojis and buttons. I'll just show you how to do that. Thumbs up if you're agreeing, of course, and all the other ones there as we go through. Now, I wanted to kind of start off here, Nadira, talking a little bit about recruitment and retention, which is an issue at the moment. We're hearing a lot about it. And I'm going to read a little bit from an article from Schools Week that was from Wednesday of this week. Actually, it was yesterday. But it said, talking about this launch of a recruitment and retention inquiry, they said, MPs launch teacher recruitment and retention inquiry. The Education Committee is set to investigate the driving factors behind chronic teacher shortages as part of a new inquiry launched today. The new inquiry into teacher recruitment and training and retention in English state schools has been launched by the Education Committee. It comes as schools continue to face huge teacher shortages with high numbers of vacancies, the highest in 11 years recorded in 2021. The government's failed to keep up with its own targets for recruiting secondary trainee teachers, missing the mark by 41% last year. And here's the bit that I really wanted to focus on. They say this will include assessing how well current teacher training framework prepares new teachers. So I'm going to ask you from the offset here. We're having this kind of big inquiry they've already framed it that teachers aren't prepared to get into teaching. Do you think not being prepared well enough is the biggest factor that you're seeing in people leaving teaching?
Not, in all honesty, not at all. It's not about being prepared. I don't think that's the biggest contributing factor as to why people would want to leave the profession. I think what is the biggest contributing factor is actual schools and actual leadership and actual culture. I don't know about you, Nathan, but when we embarked upon our PGCE or our skits program, no one really sat us down and told us that this was going to be really tough and that this was going to be something that would impact our physical health and would impact our mental health. And I know that the ECT framework does explicitly now talks about mental health and well-being. I'm the person who delivers the training for ECTs and PGCE students, but I don't think that's the biggest factor to people leaving the profession. It's not about the preparedness, I don't think. I think there are bigger things that when we come to talk about it, have more of an impact on why people decide to leave teaching. And I think we're talking about the post-pandemic years as well. People have reevaluated their lives after the pandemic, and teaching, unfortunately, for some people, is something that they don't either want to do or they can't find their purpose for it anymore. And I think your purpose is more central to it.
Well, there was something you said there that really interests me, and I've been pondering this as we go through, and we talk about the different factors that are affecting well-being and teaching itself. And you kind of sort of mentioned there about, on training, people, should we be saying to them that it's, really hard, it's a horrible job? That worries me that we've got ourselves into a headspace where we're talking about, do you know what, actually, what we need to do is better prepare them for quite how terrible their life is going to be for the next 30 years. That sounds like a really bad way to approach this to me. That, we're kind of going, do you know what, actually, the best thing to do is we need to warn them more that it's going to be horrible, and then that will fix the problem. I don't know. I wanted to ask you another bit, and this is where I want to start. And if you're listening in the studio, in the spaces live with us now, you can join in as well. I'm going to go through, and this is from an organisation called the CIPD. They're a professional body for HR, human resources, right? And I want to ask you about these factors. They've sort of talked about 7 interrelated domains for employee well-being. So we're broader than teaching now. In this part that I'm going to run through to start off, we talk broader than teaching. But I want to know which ones jump out at you as particularly an issue for teachers and school staffs, and which ones, I think it's interesting as we read through, which ones have we heard things that schools are doing about, and which ones have we that we haven't. Okay, so I'm going to go through, as I say, this from cipd.co.uk. Their blurb at the start is, we've identified 7 interrelated domains of employee well-being, guided by our principles for an effective employee well-being strategy. Needs to go far beyond these standalone initiatives. No one size fits all for their strategy. Its content should be based on the unique needs. Okay, right, we've done that. Okay, that's their blurb. Right, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty. Their number one domain is they talk about health. They talk about, first of all, physical health. Now, do you hear of things? Do you think that physical health, so we're talking about health checks, well-being benefits, health insurance, all of these things, is that something that we talk about in teaching that you've heard about?
A little bit more since the pandemic. I've heard people's employee assistance programs offering like GP services, offering getting on-the-day prescriptions. I have heard about it, but I don't think that's crucial to educational settings. It may be crucial in other domains, when you're talking about, maybe working for one of the big fours, or maybe when you're working in a private sector. I think education is making the change, but I'm not sure how much it can make the change with the financial constraints placed on schools.
I will say, one of the ones on physical health for me, and I think about this, I was ill at the end of term, and I did that thing that's typically teachery, and I didn't get a doctor's appointment until Easter. I was like, oh wait, I will limp on, I will be unwell, I probably shouldn't have been in school, all it was I couldn't see, but your eyes are quite important. But sometimes I think that getting an appointment. But I do hear in people's sort of well-being charters and things that they will allow people to go for doctor's appointment. I probably could have gone for one. I think that was self-imposed well-being issue on me. I don't know. At your place of work, is that quite? Do you feel if you needed a doctor's appointment, would you just be able to get up and sort of say, I need to go for a doctor's appointment?
Nathan, I could definitely tell you that where I work, especially after the pandemic. So just a little bit about me. I was really affected by COVID. I've got an actual lung disease from COVID, and my work has been incredibly supportive. And I think it's having the confidence and the dialogue to say, I need this. And it's about your employer and your leadership team saying, actually, you're a valuable resource. And as teachers, we're quite selfless. We always think, I'm sure you were in that mindset, oh, I'm ill at the end, I've got to make it to the end. It's probably more bother setting cover. But actually, we are the most valuable resource in that room, and we need to take care of ourselves. So, yes, I know it's a pain in some schools to get that doctor's appointment, get that half an hour out. But if we want to change well-being, we need to change the culture, and we need to have these open dialogues, and we do need to put ourselves first.
That does sound like some kind of internalized culture thing that I've picked up from somewhere. That needs to be changed about me, but yeah, that must be a big problem for schools where they're having to change perceptions. Now I'm going to whiz on to this next one because we've got quite a few together. There's 7 of them, but if you are listening in and you have something to say, we're going to run through. First one is health and these factors about school staff well-being. These are from broader than just teaching, but we're pulling out the teacher specifics. The next one's physical safety. Okay, so they give it safe working practices, safe equipment, personal safety training. That to me, I don't know. It doesn't strike me as maybe a teaching issue. I can't imagine that there are situations where teachers are worried about their physical safety so much.
I think you have to think about it in the context that we're living in. We're living at a time where, last half term, if teachers are listening, I definitely felt it. Behaviour was not exactly what it normally is, and I couldn't define to you what the norm is, but teachers are concerned about their physical safety around maybe different subjects. So maybe in a classroom-based subject, like myself, and as an RE teacher in a classroom, I physically feel safe because I'm in a classroom. But what if you're a DT teacher, or you're an art teacher, or you're a food technician teacher? You've got 32 kids, and you've got gas cookers, and you've got equipment. There needs to be deep risk assessments done by heads of departments and schools to make sure that schools can run effectively, and having the safe equipment and also their own personal safety training is really important. But that's a domain-specific area, really.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
Yeah, I think now you talk about it in those ways, I am kind of brought in. Certainly, I've been when, primary PE, for example, or outdoor ed in primary, where we used, you'd be guaranteed a teaching assistant and it would work and you'd be doing den building and that was fine then. But suddenly, we've cut back on the teaching assistant, or they need to run a different intervention. Certainly, there were times where I start feeling worried, and maybe there is something to be thought about there, but yeah, that does worry me. The next one in health, because there are 3 in health: physical safety, mental health. Now, you said you're already talking to ECTs about mental health.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if you look at the education support research, there are there's a high number of teachers leaving because they're saying their mental health is really struggling, and they're really they're not sure what to do about it. And I think it goes back to the point, Nathan, that we are selfless creatures and we do worry about other people before we worry about ourselves. But I think Kat Howard puts it really well in her book about, and Patrick Otterley on Twitter as well, put your own oxygen mask on. But we've come to a point where we need to teach people, adults themselves, about what mental health is and how to look after ourselves. And, I've been leading this wellbeing award at the school, and I've had quite a few members of staff go to me, you don't need to worry about me, I'll be all right, I'll get on with it. And I said, that's fine, but we're still going to have this conversation about what it is to be mentally healthy and look out for the signs and symptoms, because I think mental health has become a big thing since the pandemic. I don't think anyone was talking about our mental health, really. We spoke about the children's mental health, but we never spoke about our mental health. And again, if we're talking about a productive workforce, you're going to get great output when people feel valued and feel mentally safe and psychologically safe to either make mistakes or to do some learning. But we are now at a point in our profession where we have to explicitly teach our teachers how to take care of themselves as well as others.
Yeah, and of course you've got some people. It sounds like I would be one of those nightmare people for you, where I'm saying like, no, I'll be okay, and I'm actually probably one of the people who needs the most help, and that I do feel for people who are in these leadership roles.
Yeah, and you've got to think about movements like Movember. It's the first time in 5 years that, when I joined my school, I said, right, we're going to do something about male mental health. And it was small, but we did something fun, and the teachers got involved and the kids got involved. And it just gets the discussion going, and it makes that uncomfortableness, about talking about something that I can't see. I can feel it, but I can't see it. And it starts to make it unwind and get the children and staff thinking about what it means to actually be mentally safe, psychologically safe, and what it means to have a good mental health.
Nathan seems to have disappeared. Nathan, come back in. I've just invited him back to speak. And hopefully Nathan is going to be able to come back very clearly, some sort of connectivity issue. If you have a question about getting staff wellbeing right, make sure that you do use the speech bubble in the bottom right-hand side to tweet along. And you can also use the bottom left request button to request it as well. Nathan, back to you.
Yeah, hi Tom. Sorry, I just unplugged my phone there, but I'm back. Sorry, I was running through our kind of different things. We've talked about health. We've talked about physical health, psychological health, mental health. And one of the bits that we wanted to get onto next, then, one of these domains is about good work. So Nadira, I'm going to run through these. So the first one in good work is about working environment. And I guess we kind of talked about this a little bit. It says ergonomically designed working areas, open and inclusive culture. Is that something that jumps out as you as a teacher issue?
Fundamentally, where we work, we should be able to be ourselves to a certain extent, professionally, and having that open and inclusive culture is imperative to our performance.
Okay, so we're going to skip over working environment. Just, as I say, I think that's a small one for us. This one, though, I think is a big one, right? The next one in good work. So we've done health, we're on to good work, is good line management. Do you think there is an issue in education with line management when we talk about well-being? And don't forget, if you're listening into the space, you can join in as well by tweeting us or hitting that call-in button. What do you think, management?
100%. Your line manager and your line management does affect I think it affects your productivity, because sometimes you look for support, and sometimes if you don't have those opportunities to have that dialogue with somebody, whether it be a line manager, senior leader, middle leader, I think it really can affect you, because it allows them to take a investment in you. That's what I see as good line management. And I don't think anywhere in education teaches you how to line manage. And now we've got this whole new, what I call a new development education is coaching, and people trying to coach people so that they feel professionally valued and they have their personal growth. So, yeah.
Hey, well, do you know what? Interestingly enough, further down on the list, and we will get through a few of these because I'm going to work on. There is one about personal, a whole domain on personal growth that they pull out as an issue. But so good line management, we talked about work demands. Now, this when I talk to people on Twitter, this is something that comes up a lot when we talk about well-being. Work demands. Is that a problem in teaching for you?
For me personally,
or do you think? Sorry, maybe I should have reworded that.
Yeah, it's workload. Workload is definitely an issue. Look at education, sport. 70% of people leave education because of workload. So, what why are we not working systematically in schools? Why are we not sharing good practice and collaborating to prevent, to prevent workload issues for teachers?
Okay, now we're going to whiz through the rest of these because we have got a few other bits and pieces that I wanted to ask you about. So, if we go through for the next ones, and of course, if you're listening in as well, some of these will jump out. You can say, like, is it high on your agenda or is it maybe lower on your agenda as we go through? Right, so we've done this good work one, I think, is massive. So we've done health, which was physical health, physical safety, mental health. Good work, which was working environment, good line management, work demands. Autonomy is on there.
Yep, I would say high priority.
High priority. Change management, so that's communication, involvement, and leadership.
Yep, definitely high priority.
And then pay and reward is the last one in this section.
I think nationally we know that pay and reward is a definitely a high priority for all teachers.
So those are the first two of these domains that the CIPD put out, which is a professional body for HR, about things that people should be considering. Now I'm going to whiz on to the next ones, but I'm going to whiz through these kind of a little bit at their broader level.
Yep.
So the next one is sort of a domain they talk about values and principles. So in here we've got leadership, ethical standards, inclusions and diversity. Do you think there's a well-being issue in education around those? Is it something that you're working on specifically?
I think there's a kind of issue with inclusion and diversity, making sure that we're representative and making sure that we are looking at risk factors for certain employees, whether they be our, disabled employees, making sure we're making the reasonable adjustments and making sure that we want our classrooms to be inclusive, but we also want our colleagues to be included regardless of any barriers. So inclusion and diversity would have an impact on well-being.
Yep, so they'd be quite high. I'm going to run on to the next one then. We've got this, they've termed as collective social, but I think this is kind of that broader bit. They talk about employee voice, they talk about positive relationships, so team working, healthy relationships, dignity and respect. Is that something that you think about in your role?
I think earlier, Nathan, you said about good work. If we have good work, then we have values and principles, and we have collective and social social domains in our work life, because we are being communicated to, and we are building those relationships with the line managers. So I think they're actually intertwined.
Oh yeah, okay. I think there is some of these that merge between. The next one, I think, is definitely something I've heard in education. The last two are ones that I hear very little of in education. So we're going to do this fifth one. It's called personal growth. So is there career development, positive relationships? They talk about from an emotional point of view, lifelong learning, creativity, opportunities for that. Would that be something you'd be looking for from someone on their wellbeing plan?
Yeah, we know teachers want to feel valued, and we know teachers want to develop, whether that be from an ECT to a middle leader to head of department, a senior leader. We know personal growth contributes to well-being, and given the right opportunities and authentically given them as well. And I think just without saying too much, like we know some schools have a culture where it's not authentic and it can be toxic. But if you invest in someone and you allow them to grow, and teachers should have a growth mindset, this is like this is more than cupcakes. I don't want a cupcake. I want you to invest in me, and I want you to see how I can improve outcomes in your school.
I really like it. I'm going to find that and clip that quote and maybe put it up somewhere, because I love that as a quote. Now, these last ones then are things that I haven't heard about. So we're really interested if you've heard about things. Now, the first one is good lifestyle choices. They talk about physical activity and healthy eating. Now, I'm torn with this because I'm unsure whether I feel that's my employer's job to do that for me, or whether I feel we start stepping into with yoga clubs, with things like this, where we're stepping into kind of a different area, that kind of surface level stuff. What would be your thoughts on schools getting involved in people making good lifestyle choices?
We know for children, good lifestyle choices need to be directed, but as adults, should we be responsible for our own lifestyle choices? To a certain degree, yes, but we also know that our productivity, our mindset can change when we belong and we are nurtured and looked after ourselves. So I can say from a school in East London, Healthy eating club, everyone enjoys a porridge and their free coffee, which is sustenance and it keeps us going. But not everybody enjoys enforced fun. Not everybody wants to go to a walking club because they want to meet their daughter after school, or they want to see their friend that they've not seen who's, managed to get time off work. So well-being for me wouldn't be about physical activity and enforced fun. Well-being for me would be, are we nourishing our staff so they've got a good day? Because, I'm not a parent, but I know many other teachers who are parents who haven't had their cup of coffee in the morning. Just having a free coffee in the morning or being able to get a bite to eat starts the day off well.
Hey, I think you're right. That enforced fun part is the bit that worries me about it. Is that I know that personally. If I went to school and they told me, we're not having an inset day today, we're all going to do yoga together, I would hate that. For me, I would hate that. I know some people might enjoy that, and some people want to kind of socialize at work and all of those things. But for me, I would hate that. And maybe that's where it needs to be that kind of more nuanced, like choice and opt-in and those kind of things. I think for me, I'm certainly more online with what you're talking about, where I want to feel valued. I want to be given opportunities. I want to have the chance to progress. All of those things are things that make me feel better, more than a walking club at lunchtime, possibly.
Yeah.
Right, this last one, and I don't know, maybe this is different schools. So if there are people listening in from different schools, this is something they talk about: financial well-being, and we will get onto teacher specifics after this, because I've got lots of questions for you and for our listeners as well about what's going on in schools. But they talk about financial well-being, and this is from all businesses. They talk about this being part of well-being, fair pay and benefits policies, retirement planning, employee financial support and advice, so debt counselling, signposting to external sources, all of these things. Is that something you hear about in education? Because I don't.
Financial well-being is something that I've been privy to here as a senior leader on my team, and that's more about supporting your colleagues and supporting the whole school. Now, I know the specifics that we're talking about tonight is teacher well-being, but hey, there's a whole load of people that make our jobs a hell of a lot easier: the cleaners, the reprographics people, the IT guys. And employee financial support is something that you can get through the education support system if you buy into the education assistance program. And some schools do offer signposting and free advice for this, and equally offer emergency funds if people are really experiencing something dire, that they have to go and see their family but they can't afford a ticket, or they need to repair their boiler. We've just gone through the cost of living crisis, and I can say that with confidence that a senior leadership team that discusses the cost of living crisis, not just for the children at the school, but for their employees and the people that they work for, is one where you want to be and where schools should be moving towards.
No, I think you raised some very valid points, and I think particularly, when we broaden out that kind of idea of well-being, I often hear it focused on teachers. I hear it less so focused on other staff as well. What are we doing for our support staff well-being? All of those things, because often, unfortunately, I think in some schools we'll say, right, we're going to do something for well-being. We're going to let everyone have bacon rolls for breakfast, and so put extra work on our canteen and kitchen staff by doing that, who won't get to eat it and have to do the washing up from it. But at least the teachers feel better. Maybe that does feel a little bit two-sided. Right, I want to give a quick shout out just while we're in between our topics here to John Catt Education, who help us out with these shows, and you can visit them at johncattbookshop.com. Some amazing titles on there. Of course, you've got their teaching walkthroughs, you've got their inaction series, you've got their researched series, but of course, lots and lots on teaching and learning there. Why teach? What the academy taught us, what does it look like in the classroom? A whole range of books there from johncattbookshop.com. Go to their website, follow them on Twitter, and as I say, some amazing titles there from some amazing people. Now, Nadira, I wanted to ask now, because this is where a lot of this comes from, and I'll focus on it. And I had completely forgotten about a part of this, but we talk about why well-being. Back in May 2021, the DfE published the Education Staff Wellbeing Charter for Schools. And I had forgotten that actually Ofsted signed up to that as well. Ofsted have made a teacher wellbeing pledge. If you want to go and find what they said they do, by all means, go and see it. It's worth reading if you're anything critical of Ofsted at the moment, go and see what they agreed to do about education staff wellbeing. But they talked about creating a charter to highlight staff wellbeing in the education sector, a tool for schools and colleges to create and publicly commit to their own wellbeing strategies. Obviously, they've seen that there's an issue. Do you think these attitudes and approaches, and you've already alluded to this, over staff wellbeing have changed over the years?
I definitely think that 2021 was a turning point for wellbeing and mental health, because we had just come out of a horrible situation. And previously to 2021, I think I was one of the people that spoke about mental health with my colleagues and with my students. So I think the attitudes over the year have 100% changed, but I don't think the backing is quite there. And by that, I mean, Ofsted and the Department for Education can make these pledges and they can say, let's introduce senior mental health leads. But why have they put a pause on the green paper for mental health for young people? So for me, actions speak louder than words, really. We can have a set of shared principles and understandings and we can educate people, but until we make sure all leaders are doing it and all leaders are doing it to a high standard, we're not going to overcome this problem of teacher recruitment and retention. Yes, we can send messages to everyone working in schools that their well-being matters, but we still have those leadership. We still have schools where leadership might not be so collaborative and visionary, but actually might be dictatorship-like. We can aim to improve people's well-being in schools and encourage a debate and encourage accountability, but who is looking at the people at the top, who we account to, the leaders in the school? The leaders in the school are responsible to create the culture and ethos in a school that is welcoming. And again, I'm going to really put this out really bluntly. It's more than cupcakes. It's more than a free breakfast. It's about authentic, wholehearted commitment to reducing workload, having clear systems and shared systematic practice, consulting your staff on their workload, and having the odd bit of a cupcake and an opportunity to belong. But really, really so, I would say that this needs to be more. This has only been in action for about 2 years, but how many schools have made a commitment to it?
I would be really interested to find that. I will have a look through and see what, if we can find the details, because I'm not sure that they've pulled it together as a specific of kind of who has and who hasn't, whether it should be published or not on your website, like other things have to be published. Maybe there's something here. We've had a message in from Paul Foz, saying, today I've just finished one of the toughest teaching weeks I've ever had. Anything related to dealing with behaviour / wellbeing would be helpful. I'd love to be a teacher again, as opposed to a prison guard / cat herder / bouncer. And I think that's what we hear from a lot of people, is that they don't want the cupcakes. They want school improvement in some form. And so I'm interested in where you see those things sitting. Is there for you a difference between what gets done to make life easier, to make teaching better, and what gets done to improve well-being?
I think they both are intertwinable, Nathan. If I am reducing someone's workload by making sure that Paul doesn't have to be, Paul doesn't have to plan his lesson as well as being doing something else that day. The fact that his lesson has been co-created with his department and he's already intellectually prepared for it, then maybe he can focus on behaviour when, there is a bit of, at the moment, unsteadiness in the air or whatever the children are experiencing at the moment. If I can say to Paul, oh, actually, that kid really misbehaved, let's put him in a centralised detention, where you're not on duty, then he can go home. And the workload is shared. It's not making sure that Paul doesn't do his work. It's making sure that you have a agreed cohesion within the school, that we all stick together and we all support each other to make sure that we get people outcomes, but also to make sure that your most expensive resource, your teachers, your TAs, everyone is feeling safe and secure. And I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think it's about doing less work. I think it's about doing systematic work. I think it's about creating a culture of vulnerability, but also accountability.
Now, I want to run through and I'll give where these are from. These are some of the suggested practical strategies schools can do to promote staff wellbeing. It's from the Anna Freud National Centre for Children and Families at mentallyhealthyschools.org.uk. Now, some of the things that they talk about doing, and I want to get your opinion on this and whether you've seen it work, or it's something that you currently do. So one of the ones they give, providing staff mindfulness, relaxation and managing stress sessions. How does that sit with you?
I think there is a duty on schools to show staff how to relax, but you can't enforce it. So it's a little bit like saying to your year 11s, hey guys, you've got 2 weeks to revise for your exams. Here is a set of exam papers. Here is a set of this. I expect you to do this and I'll be having a look at it. I can force them by giving them a detention, but that's not going to make them any more productive. It's the same with our staff. Talking to our staff as adults and saying to them, listen, our jobs are great and they're so purposeful, and that we change lives and we increase social mobility and we make sure that that children have a great life to a certain extent in our comfort, in our care. But we also need to take care of ourselves. And here are some strategies. And I can nourish the workplace. Kimberly Evans has got a great book that I've read and based some CPD on. And I'm just reading this book about Stop Talking About Wellbeing by Kat Howard, which really put things into perspective for me in her book. Because she just talks about how we need to find our why. And I'm not sure if I've gone off the topipic, but making sure that...
You're ticking off quite a few of the other ones that are next down on their list as advice to do. So go for it.
So making sure we know our why is so important to our well-being. But yeah.
Well, let me run through some of these other ones. So you've already kind of talked about this a little bit, which is offering resilience-based workshops here for staff to normalise the process about speaking about well-being. That's something you've already talked about. And another one here was creating a sense of belonging to the school.
I think that contributes to culture. I think you have in any school, if they're going to be successful and have staff retention, it is the culture of the school.
Now, there's a couple of other bits in here that I'd like to get your opinion on. Because I find them, I don't know, they're slightly, I don't know how I feel about them. So there's this one that says teacher appraisal that is about encouraging and that concentrates on the praise aspect. Targets should be realistic and concentrate on raising standards for children and young people. And they go on to say further down, making staff recognition and praise a part of your school's culture, setting aside regular time in slots in meetings to do this. Do we need to praise teachers more?
Staff need gratitude at all levels. And as schools, I don't think we often thank our teachers for what they do. How many people went to Paul today and said, Paul, you know what? Today was a tough day, but you held it in there, mate, and you did a really good thing. Because that is the turning point for someone to go, I've been recognised for what I've done. Gratitude, research shows gratitude really contributes to well-being, especially gratitude from the right place. I don't want to be thanked by a student. I want to be recognised by my leaders and my managers, and I want it in a timely fashion because I am, as colloquially to say, busting a gut for these children and for the school, and I want to do it, but I want the recognition. Schools are notorious, and it's because of time constraints. And, one of the things that I'll talk about later, some of the things I've implemented is an opportunity for gratitude, taking that Thank a Teacher Day to termly outcomes where teachers get to thank other teachers and students get to thank teachers. And think about it, when you're having a bad day, what do? I often go to my box where I have all these cards that my year 11s had written to me in 2017. And my year 11s who contact me on LinkedIn now going, Miss, I remember when you used to chase me down the corridor. Guess what I'm doing right now? I'm at Cambridge. And those are the moments I live for. We need to remind our staff, and they need to be reminded about how valuable they are. thanking teachers is absolutely integral to the productivity and valuing people. And it also comes with the fact that you're investing in them, their development, and they are who we want. But you also need to recognize people, just like we recognize students.
Well, there's something you said there that I really like the sound of, and it was this term, because I think it was the praise element in there that got to me. It's the way you said that, this gratitude, not praise. There's something in that I really like the sound of, that kind of gets to the nub of it for me, where it's kind of like, it's not about just praise for praise sake. It's not
Yeah.
about just, a star of the week, which I'm very cynical of. Even when my son comes home with star of the week, I'm like, okay, so it was your turn, was it? But actual gratitude, I think, is something that is, you're right, sorely missing sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, I'd be interested because, are there things that you specifically set out to do with wellbeing support for your staff that I've missed off the list there?
I think the biggest thing that I think I've done in my role is creating a sense of belonging. Recognizing staff is definitely something that I've created in my role. But also speaking to leaders and going, hey, did you notice that so-and-so, that Nathan, he had an absolutely top lesson the other day, like, go and thank him. Or Nathan did extra duty. We had loads of people off of the COVID. I think increasing that dialogue is something that I've done. I have done what people may describe as the gimmicky things, but that's because it's never happened in the time that I've been there, and people wanted an opportunity to connect. So yes, we have had enforced fun, but enforced fun in a way that everyone got involved. Yes, we have done co-collaboration. One of the biggest things I think I'm still working on, and I've already mentioned it, Nathan, is male mental health and destigmatizing mental health. I work in an area which is predominantly South Asian, and I come from a South Asian background myself, and mental health isn't something that you talk about. And mental health can also have very much negative connotations depending on how you translate it. It can mean that you're crazy in some South Asian cultures. It can also mean that you're possessed, and trying to destigmatize and doing the work with parents as a community is also really important, because we can talk about it all we want at school, but those children do return home to parents who don't necessarily understand it or have their own views on it. So holistic work needs to happen. It can't just happen with the teachers and the students. It needs to also happen with the parents.
I find that incredibly interesting and powerful. I don't think I necessarily hear about people when we're talking about well-being, that's spreading it out into the community, changing, because as you say, some of our young people might be picked up by grandparents in primary school, at the school gate, who maybe haven't heard these messages or haven't been part of the culture change to change, our understanding of the importance of staff well-being and mental health. That's a really powerful message, I think. Now, I want to kind of end us off, and feel free, if you're listening in, tweet us in some of your examples. I'm going to pick on a local authority, okay, and they shall remain unnamed, okay, because I don't want to pick on anyone in particular. But our next little part is advice from local authority. A local authority, unnamed. I want to know what you think of them. If you're listening in and you want to give us any critique of these things, will it work? Won't it work? What are the pitfalls? What do you think? So here they are. Some of the schools have implemented for staff wellbeing. So the first one here, staff wellbeing training, including information about the importance of staff wellbeing for pupils, strategies to help staff build their own wellbeing toolkit. Sounds good.
I would say, again, it's about making sure people have the right information. So building your own kind of wellbeing toolkit it sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, here's the next one for you. A wellbeing working group where a small group of staff meet regularly to discuss wellbeings and ways to promote this in the school.
Yeah, so we call them like wellbeing champions. So people who will be, it's a little bit like having what we put in student voice, having a staff voice.
I bet I haven't accidentally picked your local authority then. I think I'm just no, I've just checked.
No.
But yeah, okay. So that's something that someone could go back from this to their school and say, hey, could we have a working group on staff wellbeing if there isn't one there already?
Yeah.
Can I be part of it? Can I be involved? Now, here's one: staff social events such as going out for an evening meal or school coffee and catch up and summer barbecues?
I think that's what we talked about in terms of like enforced fun. Don't get me wrong, our head teacher is very generous and puts on a staff party at the end of the summer term and a nice Christmas lunch, and you're free to go to it and you're free to not go to it, because again, people have different priorities, whether you're going to catch a flight or you're going to go and see your grandparents or you want to pick up your child from school. Like, you can't force people to do things they don't want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's what worries me is when you hit at that level, if you're not doing the other stuff, it's kind of like the icing on the cupcake for me. A few of those things thrown in, a few donuts in the staff room, all of that stuff on top. But if you're not addressing some of these more serious kind of issues, I don't know what it's going to achieve beyond probably making people feel a little bit worse in some cases. Or, we did have some tweets coming in where people were saying, it was almost insulting the small effort of like, we've just passed Ofsted, here, have a donut.
Yeah.
It was almost insulting in a way because it was such a small gesture.
I think what you need to think about is teachers are time poor. So where leaders can give teachers time, that's more valuable than putting a donut in their mouth, or making sure that they're there for Ofsted and you've bought them a whole load of pizza and they need to stay behind. No, the pizza needs to be available if people want to stay behind, but it's not the culture. It's not the culture going, oh, we expect you to stay behind. And that's what the difference is in well-being, because you can get schools where there, you have to stay and you have to join in yoga club and you have to come to the lunch. But actually, that's not helping anybody. We need to make sure that our staff have autonomy and are accountable and are being productive. And the best way to do that is shared systematic practice and taking away the gimmicks of more than cupcakes.
Okay, here's our next one then. And, interesting, because this is one that I've been thinking about a lot, although not in these terminology. They say staff drop-ins to provide staff with an opportunity to share and discuss any concerns.
So I would say, I'm not sure what that sounds like. That would, for me, sound like something that could go to the working group or designated people. But it also sounds like to me about having a open dialogue with the people that you work with. I wouldn't just say staff drop-ins. I would say that if there is a concern, we encourage people to talk to us at all levels.
I see. Because, when I read it, I was thinking about things like supervision, or mental health support. I know some schools are doing that, where they might have a mental health nurse who's working in where you can go in and discuss. I was thinking more about broader concerns, but you're right. If you're, if it was around work, you've got to get to the right people who can help you.
Yeah. I didn't see it as supervision. I think supervision is incredibly important. And obviously as a deputy DSL and the senior mental health lead, we get that, but that's about my well-being and that's about the school making it available. I would have worded that as making sure there's supervision available for staff who are working with the most vulnerable.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So flexible approach to family events is on there.
This is a really hard one for education, isn't it? Because, again, I don't have a family, but I've heard staff say, oh, I wasn't able to go to my child's nativity play or the summer fete or the sports day. And we're a caring profession. And actually, I don't know exactly what the statistics are, but a lot of the teachers, especially in secondary schools, are female. I think that's something that needs to be worked on, about flexible approaches, especially in light of the pandemic. But I'm not sure as a nation we're there yet, or even as this local authority seems to have some insight into this, because this is going to contribute to someone's well-being. If, like you said, you didn't go to the doctors because you thought it was going to cause a big fuss, because putting the cover in, putting the request in, you might as well just go to work, get it over and done with. But it's your kid's first nativity, it's your child's first recital, it's your child's first day at nursery. You don't want to miss those moments, because we're a part of those moments for other children.
Yeah.
So why would we miss it for our own children? And education needs to factor that in.
Yeah, I think that's a really hard one, and I hear of schools that have done it well, but also, I think there is an issue around staff who maybe don't have those family connections yet, or are through choice have decided not to have children, or for whatever reason, that isn't something that they do, because you can then get all this perceived unfairness, and how you
Yes.
kind of level that out, for all staff. That everyone is kind of treated with a fair hand. I think that is a really tough one to work out how to do. The last ones on here are staff treats, e.g. a treat box or a chocolate fairy.
Healthy living, well-being.
Gimmick?
Chocolate,
Gimmicky?
very gimmicky, but at the right time. I will say that I buy a Cadbury selection box for everybody, including non-teaching staff, at Christmas, and that's probably the only time I buy it. But that comes with the whole line managers thanking people, teachers thanking people, and people don't feel like it's something from the school. It's not from anybody individually. Can be perceived gimmickly, but done in the right way, with everything else like systematic shared practice, shared workload, dialogue, can be seen as contributing to well-being.
Well, this is why you've been so helpful to me, because my biggest issue at the moment is, I work in a very kind of challenging environment, and I know that staff well-being is something that I will want to approach, but I've always been one of these people who does staff well-being through food, and I am frequently told then that, no, we're coming up to summer, everyone's on diets, I can't do that, and I need a different approach. And I've taken so much from this conversation with you.
Yeah.
It's been incredibly helpful. Now, I am conscious that we do need to finish up, because later on tonight on Twitter Spaces, if you're listening here at 7:30, we've got Education Tonight, where people can join back to discuss the topics of the day in education. But for the people who are listening, and it's been very very helpful, I will say, having you on, Nadira. What would you like listeners to take away? One thing they could take away tonight that would improve well-being at their school tomorrow, or something that they could take to talk about when they get back after Easter.
Ask someone, how are they? And listen. Not, are you okay? How are you? And be the change you want to see, because it's going to start small.
That is thank you. And so many useful quotes. I've seen them going out on Twitter. Your notifications, I'm afraid, will be going off the wall.
Thank you.
As all of these quotes have been coming out, because it has been really interesting. Don't forget, if you're listening live or you've just joined us, you will be able to hear this, listen back on Twitter. It'll be there as a Twitter space for the next 30 days at least. But I want to say a big thank you for coming on and sharing your time with us.
No, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share good practice. And I'm really hoping that anyone listening out there, and if you want to chat, please DM me. But I just want to say, don't think you're alone. We're a whole profession together, and we can do this together regardless of the adversities that we face.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, from me here in Swansea, it's Nostar from here on Teachers Talk Radio. Join us a little bit later, 7:30, Education Tonight. We'll be here again on Twitter Spaces. Thank you, Tom HB, for running the admin on the space. And we'll see you all next time. Good night.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.